Big Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Big Apple Blitz here on a Monday morning in December after the Thanksgiving holiday. Matt alongside Anthony Rivardo. Anthony, how's it going? How's the holiday?
Holiday was great. I stuffed myself like a turkey with turkey. I ate a lot of food and I had a great time. And I turned the Giants game off while I was eating dinner, which was a very kind thing that I did to myself because watching that Giants game was horrific for the parts of it that I did. I mean, they're just terrible, but it wasn't really a good weekend for anybody in New York sports, or at least New York football, other than the Buffalo Bills, who looked spectacular last night, but I don't know if we really count them. Giants and the Jets, absolute toilets in MetLife, and it's just been a really long season.
That it has. Both these teams stink, and it's a different kind of stink. Like it's something like crazy feels like it happens every week, or something toxic feels like it happens. For the Jets, figured we'd start there because this was a game where they were up 21-6 at one point in the first half. They had a chance to go up 28-6, but Aaron Rodgers misses a wide open Garrett Wilson in the end zone. Could not be any more wide open. Next play, friend of the program, both a former Jet and Giant, Leonard Williams with a pick six. Longest interception for a player of over 300 pounds in the NFL history. So Jets and Giants making history each and every week. And that was really the turning point of the game. A 14-point swing. Well, it could have been 28-6, becomes 21-13. And they just completely folded in the second half. Offense did not do a damn thing in the second half. And we got some interesting Aaron Rodgers comments, which we'll get to in a second, and it just feels like this team finds new ways to lose every week, even when you get two breaks. Laviska Shenault, the kick returner for the Seahawks, fumbled twice, giving the Jets, and the Jets recovered both times, giving the Jets great field position both times. And that's still not enough for this team to find a way to win a football game.
You know, it's really just the age-old saying, good teams find a way to win, bad teams find a way to lose, and that's what happened for the New York Jets. They're a bad football team that just found the way to blow a game that easily should have been theirs. And Aaron Rodgers, I mean, I saw the stat this morning. He's 0-5 this season in one-score games where he had the opportunity to lead a fourth-quarter comeback. All he was brought here to do was to lead those fourth-quarter comebacks, and he's failed every single time. It's been a complete and utter disappointment. That's why we're seeing the franchise blow it all up, clean house. And honestly, it's about time. I think that this has just been as much of a nightmare scenario as you could have expected. And Matt, it's really interesting. Like, we think back to the offseason and how high we were on this team, me in particular as the outside voice, thinking that this could be an 11-win team. And man, that couldn't be further from the truth. What a utter disappointment this has been.
I thought the Jets would have a legitimate shot to compete for the division title. And I also picked them to win 11 games. And most people, I think, were predicting the Jets to win 10, 11, 12 games. So it's not like we were some outlier where it's like we're so much higher on the Jets than everybody else. And Buffalo clinches the division on December 1st. There's still 5 games left to go. And they already have the division AFC East wrapped up. I want to really kind of spend this segment talking about not only Rodgers' play, but also some of his comments and how it feels like it's adding to this team in the finger pointing game. So here's a quote, and we could play it. I have it set up to play the audio as well. From Aaron Rodgers after the game. He was asked about his health being at a high, but his numbers not being what they expected. And here's what Aaron Rodgers had to say.
Why do you think statistically and the plays aren't, like, the health is now there, but maybe the numbers aren't what you'd expect it to be?
Well, there's 11 guys on the field, Sometimes it's my fault, Definitely multiple times today. And then sometimes the details aren't there in some other spots too.
Why do you
I just I hate that the first reaction is like, well, there's 11 guys on the field. Like, why can't anyone just be like, I was bad today. I didn't do my job today. And eventually he gets to that, right? Like he goes and says, I need to be better. But like the sly comments of it's, the details aren't there. I don't want to hear about the details not being there in week fucking 13. Like this is something that should have been figured out months ago. It just feels again, am I overreacting here? It kind of just feels like wanting to pass the blame anywhere else but looking inward.
I don't think you're overreacting at all. I think the details comment is kind of stupid. It's week 13. It's not week 4. When you're in the first 4 weeks of the season and you're losing games close and you're making some minor mistakes that are resulting in big losses, for the first 4 weeks of the season, you can make that argument because that's preseason, right? A lot of these players don't play in the preseason. So those first 4 weeks, that's when the small details get looked over. Week 13, though, I mean, you've had 4 preseasons at that point, 3 preseasons basically. So yeah, there's no excuses for the details to be tripping you up. And Aaron Rodgers, I mean, leadership has been in question for him throughout his tenure with the New York Jets. I think even last year, obviously, he made it look good when he was hanging out with Zach Wilson and seemingly helping him get up to speed. But I think overall, Rodgers has just been a little bit of a circus show during his time in New York, and he has created so much unnecessary negative chatter inside and outside of the organization. And it's because of comments like this, where he says just enough to pass himself off. He says just enough for the media not to completely eviscerate him. But for the fans who've been watching this team for a while and who are keeping a close eye on it, they understand what he's really saying and how detrimental it is to the locker room and the culture of the New York Jets. And that's why the Aaron Rodgers era is going to come to an end after this season. It's just enough now. He's been such a media nightmare. He just knows how to say the exact things to piss off the fans and create problems. And this is just another prime example of that.
Now, did you see the miss to Garrett Wilson in the end zone? Okay. Because I have the film, but then I want to share the comments. So I have the all 22, which makes it look even worse. Insane route from Garrett Wilson. Couldn't be any more wide open. Just give it a second here. Oh, no, that was the interception. I apologize. Sorry. Give me a second. That was the interception, which was also bad. Please hold. It's got to be the one before this. Yes, it is. Here we go. I found it. My bad. Okay, so here's the route. Wide open. Could not be any more wide open. Way overthrows it. Do you want to know what the first thing out of his mouth was when asked about how or why the throw was missed?
What was it?
The wind.
Yeah.
Now he goes. He would say, it's a throw I still have to make. But the thing you can't. The first thing when asked about it, be like, yeah, the wind was really whipping that day. I tried to throw it 5 yards inside, but it's one that I got to make. What are we talking about? You can't be any more wide open than that. Geno Smith didn't have a problem with the wind yesterday. It's like the Jets are the only ones playing in these elements that like the other opposing team doesn't have to deal with any of it.
I've heard similar excuses for the Giants and that one quarterback that they had for 6 years. I've heard the same bullshit, but I haven't heard it from that bullshit quarterback. That's kind of the big difference here is Aaron Rodgers is the one making excuses for himself. And you're right. Like he always has these comments where he takes blame, he takes responsibility eventually, but it takes him a while to get to that point. He always hears the excuse and also it's my fault. Why the excuse? Just leave it out. Leave the excuse out of it. Just say, I can't miss a throw like that. I'm a future Hall of Fame quarterback. I need to make that throw every single time. And I think that's what it is. Because he's a future Hall of Fame quarterback, he thinks that he can exonerate himself for a lot of things and kind of lean back on how could it be my fault? I'm one of the GOATs. I don't really buy that narrative anymore. And I think that inconsistent on his missed throw as he still has to hit it. Yeah. Pick six on the next play. There you go.
And that changed the entire game. Like I said, you were up, or you could have gone up. Not that you were up, but you could have gone up with a good throw. You could have gone up 28-7 at that point. Sorry, not 28-6, 28-7. But the point being that like that completely changes it because the pick six on the next play now makes it a one-score game. It's 21-13 at that point. And then it just it goes off the rails even more after that. There was a missed throw on fourth down to Devontae Adams where he got his hands on it, should he have maybe made the catch? Yeah, but if he hits him in stride, it's a walk-in touchdown. And there were other examples too of either underthrown balls or overthrown balls. He's been very inconsistent with his ball placement this year. He ended the game with a 53% completion percentage. And it's just like the the numbers and the production is not making it worth putting up with this other stuff. Like, you can't be the 23rd best quarterback in the NFL and be talking about like the wind and that there's 11 guys on the field.
Yeah, and that throw in particular, the wind has nothing to do with that. I mean, Garrett Wilson's so wide open that he could have thrown it behind his back. Most quarterbacks could have, and they still would have completed it. It's just a bad miss, and that's all Rodgers really should say there. I missed the throw. It was a terrible miss. He was wide open. Great route by Garrett Wilson. That should have been the explanation, not, oh, the wind was blowing. And I mean, come on now. Has Garrett Wilson commented on that? Has he said anything about it? Like, oh, the wind was
Nope.
fine? Because, okay,
Nope.
well, I'd love to hear what he has to say about it.
No, because he's a good soldier. He's been a good soldier throughout his 3 years with the Jets. And it sucks. Like, this was supposed to be, let's see what Garrett Wilson can do with legitimate quarterback play. And unfortunately, it hasn't been up to the quarterback play that we were all expecting. He still has 763 yards in 12 games and is pacing out for another season over 1,000 yards. But this was supposed to be like the Garrett Wilson completely pops year. And we still haven't gotten that because he's being held back by quarterback play. He was missed multiple times in this game.
I've got an idea on how to make Garrett Wilson pop to close out the season.
All right. Oh,
it's Tyrod Taylor. He hits those throws. That's for a fact.
That's kind of what Peter's saying here. We'll go to the comments. Rodgers must have come from an alternate universe and seems out of sync with everyone else. Plus, the continuous frustration has me saying it's time to bench him. They're not going to do that. Jeff Ulbrich already said today that Rodgers gives us the best chance to win. I feel like I'm living through the Zach Wilson era all over again. Again, it's people defending Aaron Rodgers, even though we're not seeing good enough play. And then the coaching staff continuing to back their guy. And there's just not a willingness to make a change. Tyrod, I think, does make those throws. Tyrod's biggest concern is his health because he does get banged up a lot. But
yep.
And then apparently, too, Jeff Ulbrich said today, because he was asked about Aaron Rodgers' numbers, and he pointed to his injuries have really hurt him this year. Then why is he playing? Why are you making? Not why are you making, but why is he playing through the injury? Whether it's the Jets side or Rodgers side, I think we know where it stands on who's the one making the case to play every week. It's clearly hurting the team.
It is, and I think that it's so funny and stupid because had Rodgers, if he's been banged up for as long as he's, kind of speculated to have been banged up, which is since what, like week 4 or 5, he's been banged up pretty much all season.
Week 4.
Yeah, if he just takes a seat for weeks 5 through 7 and then comes back into the lineup, he'd probably be playing a lot better. He'd be a lot healthier and he'd be making better throws, more timely and more accurate throws. The thing is, I think he knows he's washed. I think Aaron Rodgers knows that he is no longer a quality starting quarterback, and he knows that Tyrod Taylor is. And if Tyrod Taylor were to take over for even 2 weeks, those 2 weeks would be enough to win the job for the rest of the year. I think that's truly what it is. I think it's a pride and ego thing. I don't think Aaron Rodgers has put the team first at any point this season. I think he's put himself and his legacy first, but really all he's doing is killing a portion of his legacy and making his career look even worse with a massive stain in this season. So I think it's selfish. I think it's ridiculous. And I think that Tyrod Taylor has proven to be a very high quality starting spot starter quarterback throughout his career. And I think this would be no different. It's time to give him the chance to take over the reins on offense.
I think his stat lines, especially the last 2 weeks, are a little deceiving. Like, I think his box score stats look better than what he's actually played. Like, if you watch all 22 or even just watching the game and how it flows. Like last week, 75% completion, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 114.7 rating. That looks awesome. But they had 10 passing yards in the first half. Like they just had a completely non-competitive first half of football. Almost did enough to go back and win the game. But like you can get this kind of production that we've seen here from just about anybody else without the extra headache that comes with it. And the Jets made a big swing and tried to bring him in here. I'm not going to pretend like I wasn't excited about the move at the time and like I didn't think it was a good idea. Based on other guys who are available, like, I don't know, if paying Derek Carr big money in free agency, I don't think the Saints are loving that idea, so that wouldn't have necessarily worked. Lamar ends up staying in Baltimore anyway, so he wasn't a real option. And then you're talking like Gardner Minshew or some other options here. Yeah, I think you just have to admit that it didn't work and clean slate this. I think any fantasy about running it back and having him here in 2025, I just think would be doubling or tripling down even on this said mistake.
Yeah, I completely agree. When you make a mistake in the NFL, you've got to recognize that as soon as possible and start over. But thankfully, it does sound like the Jets are recognizing that mistake and like they are trending towards cutting ties with Rodgers. What are the salary cap implications, though, if they try to move on from him this offseason? Like, is it feasible to do? Is it possible? I know he wants out, seemingly, but can they actually realistically move on from him without completely blowing up their salary cap space?
It's going to suck for the first year. It's going to be 49 million. So this is what it looks like. 49 million in 2025. If they were to just do it, then there is all the void years after that. But if you just move on and do the 49, I think that's the better way to do it. Now, if you post June 1 him, it's spread out a little bit easier, but then you have the numbers lingering a little bit longer. I think you kind of just take your medicine next year and then do it.
What about via trade? Does it change at all?
No. Unless he post June 1 him, then it's the
60
same
million.
thing. Yeah.
Unless
Unless
you could give up a pick and Rodgers just so somebody could take the salary, but it doesn't even seem like that's an option. It seems like you're just kind of eating shit here.
Yeah, I don't. Who would do it? Minnesota is the only team that I've ever seen brought up. Like if they let Sam Darnold walk and want some insurance policy for JJ McCarthy, but I don't even know if
that would be awful. Oh God, I hope they wouldn't do that. No, I think a team with just a boatload of salary cap space and probably a solution at quarterback, they just trade for Rodgers, take a early pick, and then cut him. That would probably be the only option. But I don't think there's a team because what was it? The Broncos did that with Osweiler, whoever the fuck back in the day, right? They traded a pick plus the quarterback just to get him off the books.
Yeah, to the Texans, right?
Yeah. So I think that's really the only way out for the Jets. But even then, like you just showed with the cap numbers, I don't even think that's a possibility. So you're kind of just stuck. You're kind of married to Rodgers when you don't want to be.
They are stuck. It's frustrating, man. It really is frustrating that this is what the season has come down to. Can I give you one like slight silver lining from this game, just because I've been really down? I need some silver linings here. Olu Fashanu was excellent at left tackle, and Will McDonald had 2 sacks and now has double-digit sacks on the season.
That's awesome. Yeah, Will McDonald has been such a pleasant surprise this season, and then Fashanu or Shanu, I think it's Fashanu.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't talk Jets enough to have that name down just yet, even though it's in week 13. But he looked stellar. I've seen the clips. I've been watching the film and all that stuff on social media, clips of him, and he looked spectacular. I know that it's been a debate sparked. Was it Fashanu or should it have been Brock Bowers? But man, the Jets, they locked down a franchise left tackle for the next 5+ years that you always go that route.
I don't know, because when Bowers had however many yards he had on Black Friday, that was a huge talking point. He had 140 yards and a touchdown against Kansas City, and the Bauer boys were out in full force. And I
get it, but
debate
Bowers wouldn't have been able to put up those yards here with the Jets. And even if he did, it wouldn't have made a difference. This Jets team is terrible. The quarterback play is awful. They've been firing coaches. Brock Bowers is playing with stability, not necessarily a quarterback, but he's playing with stability at the offensive coordinator spot and the head coaching spot. And he is the focal point of that offense. In some ways, the Jets, I think they have too many mouths to feed, which is one of the reasons why I was not advocating for Devontae Adams trade. I was advocating against it. I thought that would have been a bad idea. And honestly, I think it was. I think it's too many mouths to feed, too many big personalities, too much going on with the Jets. Brock Bowers would have only made that worse. I think fortifying the trenches for the foreseeable future. Listen, a new GM coming in, whenever they get hired, they're going to be happy and feel like they're blessed that they're stepping into a team that has a franchise left tackle. They'll feel more blessed about that because that is one of the hardest positions to find the quality starter in the NFL. You can find quality starters at tight end. Maybe not a difference maker, potential gold jacket player like Brock Bowers, but finding a quality starting left tackle is really difficult. And that being one of the boxes already checked off, a task that the new GM doesn't need to complete, that will be an absolute blessing.
Brock Bowers is awesome. He was always going to be awesome in the NFL. The Raiders still stink. They're 2-10. It's not like he's come in and be like completely changed the trajectory of their franchise. Like if the Jets made
Like
that
when
pick,
the Giants drafted Saquon.
yeah,
Still
right,
talking.
exactly. And unfortunately, Morgan Moses went down with an injury, and the Jets had to put Carter Warren in, someone who they took last year, and I believe the 4th round, and he was horrible. He was a turnstile. So their plan would have been Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses, and both guys have missed time this year. Tyron Smith on IR. I think his time with the Jets is over after 10 games. So that means you would have had to play and start Max Mitchell and Carter Warren a significant amount this year, which was essentially the entire reason why I was team offensive line. Again, I don't want to make this like I'm anti Brock Bowers. I'm not. I think he's awesome. But I think we could, like, logically, you could look and see why the Jets went the offensive line route.
Yeah, you really couldn't go wrong there if you were the Jets. Either way, you're either getting a cornerstone left tackle or you're getting a complete elite difference maker tight end. But again, like I said, I think the argument for me is just long-term building of a team. There will be other opportunities to land quality starting tight ends in the middle rounds of the draft or in free agency for the Jets. But opportunities to land franchise left tackles, those come around about every 7 years probably. So I think this was the right time to take that left tackle.
If they hit on Mekhi Becton at left tackle, maybe he would have had the luxury of taking a Brock Bowers, but unfortunately they don't. He goes to the Eagles and now is okay with playing a different position, and he's been very good at right guard next to was it Lane Thomas? Lane Johnson.
Lane Johnson. The Jets did the exact same. They made the exact same mistake the Giants made with Eric Flowers, which was we drafted him to be a tackle. We have to make him work at tackle. Otherwise, we look stupid. So they never tried him at guard. Then he left, went to the Commanders and the Dolphins, and he cashed in and was a very solid starting guard for about 4 years after leaving the New York Giants. Giants are making that mistake once again with Evan Neal, a guy who played guard in college. They refused to move him to guard. Why? Well, they drafted him in the top 10 to be a tackle. You can't move that guy to guard. Yes, you can, and yes, you should. The Jets should have done it with Mekhi Becton. Giants should do it with Evan Neal. They won't, and this really highlights the incompetency of both of these organizations.
I'm out on Jet stuff. I think I talked through everything that I need to. Is there anything else you want to add, or you want to get into some Giants future draft talk now?
There's 2 things I need to see from the Jets the rest of the way. Number 1, I need to see Tyrod Taylor throw some passes. Number 2, I need to see him throw some passes to Malachi Corley.
Oh, by the way, thank you for reminding me on that. The Jets decided to throw a screen pass to their favorite player, Xavier Gibson, and it lost 5 yards on the play. Why they can't design screens for Malachi Corley, I still don't understand. Like, why draft him? Why draft him if you don't want to use him the way that everyone knows how to? Willie Colon, who's on the Jets post-game show, I thought had a great quote describing what the Jets do with some of these guys that they take. It's like they draft these players that come with a user manual, and then they just throw it out and do whatever the fuck they want, essentially, with these guys.
That is a great quote. I just think it's so confusing because the weirdest part of it, they can't seem to figure out how to get Malachi Corley the ball when he is the easiest player in the world to get the ball to. He can play running back and wide receiver. He can play 2 positions. So you have double the opportunities to get the ball into his hands and allow him to make plays. And somehow you still can't figure it out. Make it make sense, but it never will. I just can't understand what the hell the Jets are doing with Malachi Corley. And it's endlessly frustrating for my dynasty team.
I'm sorry. Maybe we should have held on to Will McDonald.
Maybe, but I don't know. Who did I pick up in that trade? I got a future first-round pick. I think that's going to be more beneficial.
There we go.
That's my Cam Ward pick.
Cam Ward pick. There we go. So good transition into this next topic here. So the Giants, we could do a little tankathon right now, pull tankathon up. They currently sit with the 3rd pick behind Vegas and the Jacksonville Jaguars. What's your feel right now? Where's everyone at in Giants land?
Out of those top 3 teams, the team that I feel most confident won't win another game this season is the New York Giants. The Giants feel to me like they are the most likely team to end up with the number 1 overall pick. The Raiders just barely lost to the Chiefs. I imagine they can squeak out another win between now and week 18. Like, they can get something done before the end of the season. The Jaguars as well. I know Trevor Lawrence, terrible hit from whatever that guy's name on the Texans was. That was disgusting. I don't think that they're necessarily the worst team in football, though. I think they can pick up a win. They play the Titans at some point this season. Good chance they pick up a win against the Titans, who aren't that great either. The Giants, though, They play the Saints this week, which is their most winnable game left. Then they play the Ravens. They're going to walk them like a dog. Then they play, I think it's the Falcons. Falcons are a playoff team. They're going to beat the Giants. Then I think it's the Colts. Colts are hot right now. They're going to beat the Giants probably. And then they play the Eagles, who might rest their starters and make that game interesting. But at that point, that's when you really send in the phone call and say, tank, tank, tank. You have to lose that game versus the Eagles if they're not even playing their starters. Pull everybody, make sure you lose. But I really don't envision another win on the schedule for the Giants. Now, because I'm the New York Giants, it's the New York Giants, and I've been a fan of this team for a long time, I'm expecting them to somehow win one of these games just to ruin their future, because that's perfect New York Giants football. But realistically, of those three teams vying for the number one pick, and I know that there's more than three teams, but of those three teams in the top three picks right now, Giants feel the most likely to lose out of those three teams. Therefore, I think they will have the opportunity to select number one overall, and then it's a discussion of who they should take with the first overall pick.
You are going to be locked in on this week 16 matchup. I'm going to pull up the Jacksonville Jaguars remaining schedule, and there are some heavy implication games down the stretch here for the Jags. Sorry, wrong team. They got the Titans this upcoming week, the Jets the week after, which is another huge one as the Jets are 6th. The Raiders, there you go. That's that one that I was talking about. The Raiders and the Jags play each other. They got Tennessee again in week 17 and then week 18 against the Colts. So their next 4 games have every single one of them have massive draft implications that you're going to have to keep a close eye on.
Yeah, major. I think that the best case scenario, they lose to the Raiders and then beat the Titans the following week, because the Jaguars need to pick in front of the Raiders for the Giants, just in case we have to trade up to go get our guy, because it's very clear and obvious what the Raiders are going to do this offseason. They're going to draft a quarterback. They seem like they're in love with Shedeur Sanders. So do the Giants. One of those teams is going to take him. The other one's going to take Cam Ward. That's probably how this goes. So for the New York Giants, if they're picking behind the Raiders better be picking behind the Jaguars, because the Jaguars won't be taking a quarterback. So if you're going to trade up with any team, it's going to be Jacksonville. So that's the hope. We need to see the Raiders beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in that matchup.
Yeah, you mentioned it seems like the Giants are in love with Shedeur Sanders. Same thing with Vegas. If as of today, like, do you think that's the route that the Giants are going to go? Do you think it will be Shedeur? Or are you still holding out hope for your guy, Cam Ward?
I'm holding out hope for Cam Ward, but unfortunately, I think that the Giants are in, quote, full bloom love with Shedeur Sanders. They look like they are just ready to do whatever they can to get him. I mean, they've gone to how many games? Joe Shane has personally scouted how many Colorado games this season? Not to mention, he and his scouts and department have been to 2 practices. That's abnormal. It's one thing to go to the games, but to go to multiple practices during the season, that's insane. And that also makes me wonder, who else are they scouting? Obviously, there's a lot of great Colorado players. Are they also scouting Colorado coaches? Is Dion potentially a guy that they might be looking at if they do decide to move on from Brian Daboll? That's part of it, I think. And I think that part of the reason that they're going to those practices and going behind the scenes and discussing, those prospects with Colorado, I think they're trying to warm Dion up to the idea of letting Shedeur play there. Because obviously we've read all the different reports. Dion might not let his son play for certain organizations. He might step in and pull an Eli Manning or an Archie Manning at that point. I think that the Giants are trying to build a rapport and a relationship with Deion Sanders so that he can trust them to take Shedeur if it comes down to that in April. Just making sure that he's not standing in the way. Now, I'm not really giving my opinion here. I don't know if it's a good idea or bad idea, whatever. Everybody knows I lean towards Cam Ward, but I do think that is a wise strategy for the Giants, is to get on good terms with Deion Sanders, knowing that he might decide where Shedeur goes in the draft.
Yeah, I think that's going to obviously play a really big role, right? Like what Deion wants for his guy. Now, we do have some love in the chat going for the Penn State quarterback, Drew Lar. Tony, he's been on him being QB1 this whole time. And then you have another Giants commenter, Seti079, says, I think Alar will be a better quarterback as well. I don't think he's in play in the top 3. I don't even know if he comes out this year. I think there's a chance that he goes back to school even.
I think there's also a chance of that. And I also think he's going to be somebody who rises for me during the pre-draft process if he does declare. I'm very curious to watch some more of him and dive into his film. I saw Brett Coleman doing some threads on social media this week talking about Shedeur and talking about Alar and just about stable metrics that translate from college to the NFL. Shedeur doesn't have many of them. His metrics are not very stable when you're talking about translation to the next level. Alar, his metrics are very stable. So it's very interesting to see. And obviously, stats in college don't always translate to the NFL, even if they are translatable stats, whatever. That doesn't always matter. But I think it's going to be a very interesting draft season with a lot of contention around who should be the number 1, 2, and 3 quarterback in this class. And for some reason, it just feels like Cam Ward keeps getting looked over. Like in all of these NFL draft circles and discussions, we hear a lot of conversations about nice Drew Alar to the Jets. There you go.
There you go, Tony. Sorry to cut you off.
There you go. No, it's fine. We get a lot of conversations, though, about Shedeur and about Nussmeier and all these other guys. And it's like Cam Ward has just been locked in as, he'll probably be a top 5 pick. But not enough people are talking about him as like this QB1 and potential game changer. And I think it's very weird and interesting. Like sometimes we get some noise and chatter about it. But I really think when you're looking at stable production year to year to year, 3 years as a starter, 2 at Washington State, then at Miami, the way that he plays is so translatable to the NFL. That's who I want. That's who I'm a big fan of. Obviously, we were talking about it before we went live. I put a quote in one of my articles, and now it's a graphic for Fireside Giants this morning. And a lot of Giants fans seem to really like it, but there's also Giants fans who are very critical of Cam Ward. Maybe somebody in the chat can kind of give me some explanation. I don't really understand why people are critical of this guy. I think that he is exactly what the New York Giants need at the quarterback position.
Yeah, you mentioned Cam Ward there and him being kind of a polarizing guy. Do you think it's because it's because of his tendency to play hero ball at times?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. And I think, like the quote that I put on Fireside Giants, he's got a tendency to play hero ball, but the New York Giants need a hero. They need a guy who can do those things. I think that Cam Ward's playing style is so similar to that of a Dak Prescott or a Jordan Love. And I know those might not be the names that Giants fans necessarily want to hear, Dak Prescott in particular, but you can't deny Dak Prescott's success winning football games during the regular season, playing hero ball. The Giants haven't had a quarterback playing hero ball since Eli Manning in his prime. We need that. We need a guy who's willing to throw the ball in the coverage, take shots, and make plays happen downfield. Plus, I love his poise in the pocket. I love his ability to extend plays. I think he's got a lot of traits that really scream franchise quarterback. I'm not saying Shedeur Sanders doesn't, but I just think Cam Ward, what the Giants need at the quarterback position, he's got the skill set for that.
Yeah, he is definitely going to take some risks, which I know that is something that you've kind of been on Daniel Jones and past Giants quarterbacks on. Like they're playing too conservative, and that's not a way to have a sustainable offense in this league.
No, I mean, the Giants take how many shots downfield every game? 1, maybe 2. They never throw the ball downfield. And I want a quarterback who does. I think that's when you look at the best offenses in the NFL, those offenses know how to get guys open downfield, and they have quarterbacks that are willing, more than willing, to take those shots. And that's what I love about Cam Ward. But interestingly enough, I've looked at the stats. Him and Shedeur Sanders have very similar 20-plus yard passing statistics. They take about the same amount of deep passes, and they complete about the same amount. So it is going to be interesting, I think, to look through their film and see how they win on those deep balls and see who really excels in that category.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be something to take, keep close watch on. And, as you mentioned, it's really the fight at the top for those 3 teams. Honestly, Jacksonville, Vegas, and the Giants, I think, are the biggest contender for the number 1 pick. And sure, one of those, I think Jacksonville, wherever they end up, is going to end up taking Travis Hunter. They're not going to go a quarterback. But if both Vegas and the Giants like the same guy and Jacksonville ends up with the number 1 pick, well, then in this case, you're probably going to have to trade up, which is something they weren't able to do a year ago, trying to get Drake May. Is that something you're willing to do? Like, do you want to give up the haul of draft picks to move up if you have to, or are you okay settling with the second guy?
I think I'm okay settling with the second guy because I think the second guy is going to be the guy I prefer in Cam Ward.
Okay.
But right now I'm looking at ESPN Sports Analytics. The Giants have the highest percentage of odds to get the number 1 overall pick. They have a 30.7% chance versus the Patriots at number 2 at 26.6%. And then the Raiders are down at 15.7%. So if it's the Patriots, if it's the Jaguars or the Panthers holding the number 1 pick, the Giants will be in good shape to trade up and leapfrog Las Vegas. but I really don't think they'll need to. I think this team is like historically bad, the New York Giants. I mean, they haven't forced an interception since week 1. It's the longest streak ever. They're the worst team in football easily. And because of that, I think this is a really interesting argument. Do you take that quarterback at number 1, or do you trade down and take a haul of draft picks and just keep rebuilding for the future? I think there is an argument to make for trading down. I would take the quarterback probably, I think. But if I got a crazy package offered to me for Travis Hunter or for Shedeur, I'd consider it. I would definitely be considering trading down, taking a second-round quarterback or a mid-first-round quarterback, and just adding all those picks and continuing to fortify the roster. There is an argument for it. I don't know if it's the strongest argument. Again, the Giants need a quarterback desperately, but there is an argument to signing a quarterback in free agency, a Justin Fields, a Kirk Cousins if he shakes free, a Sam Darnold, and then taking a haul of draft capital and building for the future. There is definitely an argument to make for that strategy.
Now, what if new plan to make the Giants fun again? Ready for this? You sign Jameis Winston, trade down for the haul, and then you get Archie Manning in 2026.
So the thing with Arch Manning, there's 2 things. Number 1, the reports indicate that he's not coming out until 2027. So you're talking about 2 more years of the tank. He's likely not going to be available in 2026. You would have to do a lot of convincing. Second thing is, it's a lot of projection with Arch. And believe me, I'm projecting he's going to be a franchise quarterback. But he's barely played in college, and we really don't know that. We've seen 5-star high school prospects go to college and not pan out. I mean, Quinn Ewers was a 5-star high school quarterback, and he's going to be a mid-round pick. So with Arch, I think the argument for that would just be the 2025 class isn't as strong as the expected 26 and 27 classes. It's not necessarily about Arch, but it's just about talented quarterback classes. This one doesn't seem like it is the right year to take a quarterback. And if you're the Giants in 2019, it was a bad quarterback class. You forced it with Daniel Jones and it never panned out. Had you waited another year, you could have ended up with a Justin Herbert. And that might be the argument for trading down and collecting draft picks. Because if you trade down, 2026 draft class might be full of quarterback talent, whether that be Arch declaring early or it be somebody else. But right now, you're kind of forcing yourself to fall in love with quarterback prospects who, let's face it, Shedeur and Cam last year, I don't think any of them are top 3 quarterbacks in that class, even at this point. Probably not even top 4, arguably not even top 5 quarterbacks in that draft class, depending on how you felt about a Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy, or Michael Penix, or all 3 of those combined. So you might be talking about quarterback 6 or 7, depending on how you look at last year's quarterback class versus this one. So that would be the argument for me. If you don't have a conviction in this draft class, you trade down, you keep building, and you hope that the 26 or 27 draft classes are better. I don't know if you want to wait that long. This regime certainly cannot wait this long, but that's why I'm advocating for a cleaning house. Clean house, take a new head coach and a new GM and let them build it from scratch and take their time with it, because that's the argument here. We keep hearing Giants can't keep overturning. You can't overturn. You can't keep – it's insanity to keep doing the same thing over and over. But the Giants have never done it this way. The last time they fired their GM and their head coach, they've always had a quarterback in place that they forced upon the coach and the GM. This time around, you could have 0 quarterback on your roster, fire everybody, completely reboot, retool from scratch. This would be a true house cleaning, because you're not only cleaning house in the management and the coaching staff, you're cleaning house in the locker room as well. You don't have your leaders. Your star players are gone. The other ones are injured. So realistically, you are starting from scratch if you hire a new regime this time around. And the Giants have not done that the past 2 times that they've rebooted their franchise. So now would be the perfect time to clean house and give this general manager, head coach, and combo carte blanche to do whatever they want, whether that be drafting a quarterback or punting and waiting to take a quarterback in 26 or 27. You can actually finally bring in a new regime and be patient with it this time around.
I agree with everything you just said there. Unfortunately, I don't think the Giants are going to do that. I think they are going to end up keeping Joe Shane, which then will force his hand to take someone this year. Because like it's pretty much, if they keep him, it's I got to find the quarterback and I got to find him now. Mm-hmm. You don't then buy yourself an extra 2 years. So you're right. I do think it puts them in a tough spot.
He's painted himself into a corner. as does Brian Dable. And the last thing that I want to see the Giants do, and you know that I like Brian Dable. I think he is a good coach. I actually would like to see him pan out as a head coach, whether it be with the Giants or someone else. But the last thing that you should do if you're the New York Giants is take a page out of the Bears playbook. Seriously, you're gonna draft a quarterback with potentially the number 1 overall pick while you have a lame duck head coach at the helm, somebody who's on shaky, thin ice, standing on his last leg. It's what the Bears have done to their past 3 quarterbacks. Hopefully, it doesn't kill Caleb Williams' career, but it killed the last 2 careers of their quarterbacks. Don't do it. If you're going to take a quarterback, you need a new head coach as well, in my opinion. And that's saying a lot considering how highly I think of Brian Dable and his ability to develop head coaches. It's nothing against Dable. It's just about the probability of drafting a quarterback into a situation where the head coach is standing on his last leg. It never works out. So if you're going to go the quarterback route, you should go the new head coach route too. And if you're going to go the new head coach route, you should go the new GM route too. That's the thing that John Mara is clearly missing here. He thinks that he's done the same old thing time and time again, rebooting, cleaning house. He hasn't truly cleaned house because he hasn't given a new GM an opportunity to take a quarterback without there being one on the roster. And that's the big difference here. So this would be the first time since Eli Manning that the Giants could bring in a GM and completely rebuild the roster. The past few times they've tried to win while rebuilding, that doesn't work. You have to tear it all down. This is the prime opportunity to do exactly that.
I think you nailed it. I really do think you nailed it, Anthony. Unfortunately, like we've been saying, I don't think they're going to do that with Joe Schoen. I think they're going to do a half measure, and take it from someone who's seen a lot of half measures over the last 15 years for their team. Doesn't work. You gotta do a clean slate, have everyone on the same page. GM or timeline rather. GM, head coach, quarterback, all on the same timeline is your best opportunity for success. It doesn't always work that way. The Jets essentially got it with Douglas, Robert Saleh, and Zach Wilson. I know Douglas was here for a couple of years, but he didn't have the 2019 draft, and we could debate all that all day long. But that's your most likely path to success. I just unfortunately don't think that's what they do here.
I don't either. I think that they are sticking with Joe Schoen, and to me, listen, I've praised him in the past for certain things, but I've been highly critical of him for other things. Daniel Jones' contract in particular. To me, that's one of the most egregious errors that an NFL general manager has made in the history of the league. I think somebody needs to be held accountable for that, and I think Joe Schoen needs to be fired because of that contract. Personally, that's how I feel about it. Others might disagree. They might say, oh, John Mara had his involvement. John Mara probably wanted that contract signed. Sure, totally possible. All that's true. The NFL MVP is playing in Philadelphia right now. The Defensive Player of the Year is playing in Green Bay. What's the excuses for that? Again, I was fine letting Saquon walk. I was never fine letting McKinney walk. And if you look at the way that this roster is built, you've got rookies playing 90% of snaps at their positions at like 5 different positions. Utterly ridiculous, and highlights just how poorly he's constructed this roster over the last 3 years and how handicapped he was by that terrible contract he gave to Daniel Jones. All of that said, to say that Joe Schoen has made more mistakes than he's made positive moves to build the roster. He's done more to hurt it, and therefore I'm ready to give somebody else a try. Even though it's only been 3 years and I said that I'd be patient, my patience has already run thin, and I think that it's very clear and obvious this team is heading in the wrong direction and they need somebody else to take over.
Can I give you another former Giant that I really liked a lot that they let go, who was really good yesterday?
Former Jet as well, I think.
Not a former Jet.
Oh, I thought you were talking Leonard Williams. He was spectacular yesterday.
Leonard Williams was spectacular. He was unbelievable yesterday. Not him. Julian Love.
Julian Love, friend of Fireside Giants. We had him on for an interview in 2020. I freaking love the guy. I was pissed when they let him go. I was pissed when they let McKinney go. For some reason, this is the thing the Giants do. They just don't like to pay safeties. They love to let these safeties walk. Positional value, bullshit, whatever. Letting leaders walk out of the locker room. Letting great players walk out of the locker room. It's ridiculous. And it's basically been Joe Schoen's MO. He's let all of the leaders walk out of that place. He's let all of the good talent leave. And he thinks that, oh, I'll just draft somebody to replace those guys. You're not that good at drafting, Joe Schoen. Look at your draft history. You're just letting talent walk away and replacing them with half as talented players. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I miss Julian Love. I really liked Julian Love. Again, we had him on Fireside Giants, so it really sucked to see him leave. Anytime you interview a player, you want that player to turn into a Hall of Famer for your team. So that really sucked, and I was always a huge proponent of Julian Love. I was screaming from the rooftops to keep him that offseason. But nevertheless, Joe Shane Ball.
Yeah, I wanted the Jets to sign him really badly before 2023. They don't, and the Jets have major problems at safety too. Nonetheless, I think we this whole episode kind of encapsulates both the Jets and the Giants are going to be in a spot where there's going to be a lot of change this offseason. So a lot more to come.
Oh, yes. Lots of change. I mean, we'll see how much change is in store for the Giants. It seems pretty iffy whether they're going to keep the coach and GM, whatever. But again, I think if they lose out the rest of these games, end up with the number 1 overall pick, I don't know how you let this GM keep that number 1 overall pick. Let somebody else step in and make the most of it. That's how I feel. But we'll see how it goes. It's going to be a very interesting next few weeks here on Big Apple Blitz.
That'll do it for us on this episode. We'll be back later in the week to talk more Jets and Giants. Follow Anthony's work over on Fireside Giants. You can find me on Talking Jets or Matt O'Leary NY. That'll do it. We'll talk to you next time.